Mainly, I'm going to deal with what are the radiological parameters which are required to plan the surgery. So we all know that there is adult spinal deformities of two types. One is idiopathic adult spinal deformity. That is the adolescent idiopathic scoliosis, which is not treated, which continues on to adulthood. And then we have a degenerative or a de novo adult spinal deformity. That is because of maybe degenerative or might be a iatrogenic post-surgical deformity or maybe a paralytic. The goals of the treatments are very important. In pediatric spinal deformity, it is always to prevent the progression of the deformity. But when it comes to adult spinal deformity, it's mainly to give relief from the pain and reduce the disability. So preparing of surgery in adult spinal deformity, we all know that basically these patients are elderly and they are having a lot of comorbidities. So we need to deal with them more than anything else other than the surgical part. To deal with these comorbidities and reduce the complication is the key. And we have to deal with patient expectations. I'm not going to go into detail of all these comorbidities. So n number of comorbidities can you expect, whether the patient smokes, whether the patient has a history of chronic lung disease, chronic coronary artery disease, or patient is having diabetes, renal failure, so hypertension. So all these comorbidities actually determine your outcome. So that's a different topic, and that's again a major topic. So I will not go into detail of them. Coming to the radiological parameters, you always need this 36-inch standing AP and lateral X-rays, and supine side bending X-rays, flexion extension X-rays, and then if you have a significant kyphosis, maybe push prone X-rays. So in X-rays mainly you will see the magnitude of the sagittal and the coronal decompensation. Basically the main aim in adult spinal deformity is to correct the sagittal imbalance rather than the coronal imbalance. And you have to do dynamic X-rays and side bending X-rays to see how much basically correction you can achieve. These three parameters are very important. We all know them. That is SVA, which has to be always less than 5 centimeters, and pelvic tilt. This is the one of the most important things because this is the which determines ultimately your outcome. And spinopelvic harmony, that is you have to maintain the global spinal balance, that is lumbar lordosis has to be plus or minus pelvic incidence 9 degrees. So why pelvic tilt is important? Because with the increase in the progressive kyphosis, body tends to compensate. Compensation, the pelvis retroverts, increasing the pelvic tilt. So always correcting this pelvic tilt is more important. So if you see, as and when the kyphosis increases, the pelvic goes on retroverting. So what happens if you have a higher pelvic incidence? The ability of compensation is higher. So you can actually accept more amount of kyphosis, still maintain the SVA onto a balanced spine. But then if you have a lesser pelvic incidence, it's difficult to compensate for the deformity. So highest, basically what are the things which correlate with your outcomes? That is, first thing is T1 sagittal tilt. Now it's not only the pelvic tilt, basically because it's a global spinal alignment, your cervical sagittal alignment parameters also matter. That is T1 sagittal tilt and SVA and pelvic tilt. So these actually correlate highest with the outcomes. So coronal imbalance, as I was telling, it has to be less than 4 to 5 centimeter. And what are the radiological parameters which really determine whether this curve is going to progress? A Cobb angle of more than 30 degrees. And if you have an apical rotation of greater than grade 2. And lateral rhistesis is the one which actually has the highest correlation. If your lateral rhistesis or a lateral subluxation is more than 6 millimeter, it is a greater indication of progression. And as the L5 is positioned more higher and higher, not deep set into the pelvis, the progression rate is higher. So there are many classifications which are devised based on these parameters. This was before pelvic incidence or pelvic parameters were taken into consideration, the Schwab classification. But then now the SRS Schwab classification, they take into account the pelvic incidence and the lumbar lordosis mismatch. and global alignment, which is measured through the SVA, and pelvic tilt. So considering all these with the magnitude of the curve, this classification is done. And as and when you get more pluses to your deformity, the higher the chances of progression and difficult is the situation to manage. And then these parameters again determine how successful is your surgery is going to be and how complicated your surgery is going to be. That is again cervical lordosis, especially the subaxial cervical spine. In that, what you have to see is neck tilt, thoracic inlet angle, and T1 slope. So that C2 to C2 to C7 SVA is the one which again determines whether when you do surgery on these adult deformities, whether they are going to develop PJK and whether they are going to develop cervical myelopathy symptoms. So these are again the same as pelvic parameters. T1 tilt is same as a pelvic tilt, and neck tilting angle or a T1 tilt, and then thoracic inlet angle is akin to the pelvic incidence, and T1 slope is akin to the sacral slope. Only thing is there you take it as the centroid of the hip joint as the centrum, and here you take it as the manubrium as your centrum for the measurements. So why this is important? Because subject with more positive SVA demonstrate increase in cervical lordosis, because as and when basically there is a compensatory adaptation at the cervical spine whenever there is a kyphosis which increases. Why that happens is, if you see this, basically larger is the PI, larger is the lumbar lordosis, in turn larger is the thoracic kyphosis. So compensate to it, there is a increased cervical lordosis. So that is why T1 slope is the what which determines basically subaxial cervical spine lordosis, whether your central of gravity line is going to fall on the balanced parameters. So that is why it is determined by SVA, PT, and thoracic kyphosis. So again the relationship is same as PI equal to PT plus SS, that is T1 inlet angle is equal to T1 slope plus neck tilt angle. Depending on these parameters, Lenke and Silva classification, they gave these three categories. There are flexible deformities which correct almost to the tune of 50% when you do a supine X-rays or a bending X-rays. So these patients are relatively easy to manage. Stiff deformities which correct less than 50%, 25 to 50%, and partially improving sagittal alignment when you do a supine X-rays. So these patients will not require major osteotomies. You can get away by doing just basically anterior procedures or just by doing a Smith-Peterson's osteotomies. But these deformities which are fused deformities which don't have any flexibility, I'll take just 30 seconds more. They do not move on any imaging, so they need some kind of 3-column osteotomy. So carry home message, it needs a meticulous planning, needs a lot of planning on the radiology, and as I mentioned, these patients have comorbidities. Dealing with them is more important as compared to doing surgery on them, and address the symptoms and the signs, and sagittal parameters ultimately determine your surgical plan. Thank you.